everyone. I am excited that we're going to get to go over recurring services today, so that'll be fun. Let's go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned before, we're going to go over recurring services. That definitely has an impact on our month-end process, so how those are tied together. Recurring services is something that we here at Fourlane help our clients with. It's something that a lot of businesses don't necessarily have time to do, right? Because they're busy with the day-to-day. So we are going to focus today on how doing our day-to-day transaction, putting them in, how that impacts our month-end close, and some ways that we can kind of help automate that. I am Lori Walsh. I am a partner here at Fourlane. And before I get started on our topic today, I want to remind everyone that we do have a YouTube channel. So if you have missed any of our webinars, or if you need to go back and revisit them, you can always find them on our channel at youtube.com/Fourlane. You can subscribe also, and that way you do get notifications when any new videos are uploaded. In addition to that, we do have our on-demand support. It is based upon your QuickBooks user count. So it's $25 for up to 5 users. If you have 6 or more, then it does drop to $20 per user. But how does it work? Well, once you have signed up, whenever you need help with some of the issues listed on this slide, such as product registration, QuickBooks error codes, you have a rebuild fail, all it takes is a simple email to our help desk about what is going on, and we'll get back to you within an hour, and we will go over what that issue is and find some solutions. So if you are interested in more information there, please reach out if you need more information on that support plan. All right. So now let's talk about recurring services and what that actually means. So when you think of recurring services, think of a group of tasks, right, that need to be done every day, maybe every week, or in times, right, during month-end close. There's those that have to happen every month. These are income and expenses that we want to record in a proper time frame, like the month that they occurred or the day that they occurred, right, so that we can close out our financials more accurately, especially like we talked about last week. If we are doing a accrual basis, we need to make sure that we're putting those in there, right? Because it's going to be reflected at the time that we put that in. This is also where Fourlane can really help. We do have a team that supports our clients every day. So some of those include managing their bank feeds so that the full month of transactional data, whether that's on the bank side or credit card side, right, that we have all of those, all the way up to CFO services. So what we have found is that a lot of our clients, as I mentioned before, they have full-time jobs, right? They're making that business work, and accounting can sometimes get left, right, to just month end, which means we're hurrying, trying to get that done. So Fourlane can help. And I'm going to go through some of those areas that we can definitely do that, or hopefully teach you some as well if you aren't doing them all. So let's go into some more details when we talk about recurring services. So one of the main concentrations here at Fourlane is helping clients focus on their data. Okay, this helps them make better business decisions. And one way that we do that is trying to understand like how we report revenue or income, how we report our expenses, right? Because if we're doing that timely, then our financial statements, when we run those in QuickBooks, are going to reflect more accurate numbers, right? More complete numbers. As you can see from this slide, we do have many ways we help our clients. The ones we're going to cover today are more along the line of establishing processes, looking at financial reports, even KP advisory. KPIs are key performance indicators, and that's how we use the data to tell us more, okay? We want to be able to understand how to use this information moving forward and effectively. So now let's go ahead and jump into our sample file and get started. So as you can see here from the home screen, which all of you are familiar with, whether we're using the online or the desktop, today we're focusing on Enterprise. Our day-to-day transactions, or in some cases weekly transactions, depending on how we're using them, are all reflected here, right? So I can go in to enter a bill, receive inventory, or even enter bills against inventory. Now, why are our bills important? Well, they help us, if we have inventory, right? If we're entering a receipt, which is tied to a bill, right? So let's just go into one. If I go ahead and let's do without, if I do, whoops, must have clicked the wrong one. Let's take that off. So if I'm entering an item receipt, especially against a purchase order, right, then that means and if I'm doing inventory specifically, right, I can have those inventory items, I can receive those, which means my inventory counts are going to be more accurate, right? Because if I'm receiving them the day we get them, then my numbers are going to go up. And then that means on the other side, which we'll talk about in a minute, whenever I invoice, then that means I actually have inventory to invoice. If it's a scenario where it's an expense that I need to record, let's say somebody had to run out and buy some paper for the copier, well, I can go ahead and put that in against my office supplies the day that we bought it. That means when that if I use my credit card, right, when that credit card receipt comes through on the bank feeds, it's going to match. But when I run my profit and loss report, it's going to show that we have that expense, and that allows me to have in real time what my numbers are, okay? Let's go back to our home screen. Now, if I am using the receipts here as well, so if I'm using purchase orders, remember purchase orders, sales orders, and estimates, since they're non-posting, they allow us to see what we've either promised our clients we're going to sell to them, right? Or show us what we've ordered from our vendors to meet those needs. But they also help us know that we're not going to double pay for something, right? So let's say that we have received something, or we ordered something, right? Let's say we ordered lumber for a project that we're doing downtown, right? But I don't want to take a chance of doing that twice. So I want to put that on a purchase order. And when I receive against that, and this is where it's going to help us in the long run, especially on month end, if I'm receiving against that purchase order, I know how much it's supposed to cost, right? I can make sure that I'm checking that bill against what they promised us that it would cost us, which means our costs are going to be more accurate, right? And that's going to impact long term. So we want to make sure that we're using those checks and balances to make sure that we're being consistent. Okay, another way that this helps us, if we are putting in our transactions every day, we have clients that will actually only enter their transactions maybe weekly, sometimes monthly. In fact, I'm curious, how many of you out there, you can go ahead and use the chat for this, actually entered them maybe from another system, and you're actually putting in a transaction on a weekly or monthly basis. And then for those of you that do, how does that impact you at month end, or does it? So some people may not have much to do with the month end part of it. They're more on the day to day, but I'm just curious how that impacts you. So feel free to put that in the chat if you don't mind. Another way that we can make sure, right, that we're doing things on a daily basis to impact our financials is by entering our invoices. So this is where our income comes in, right? So anything that we sold, right? Now, for some people, if that's retail, they probably have people coming in the storefront, or if they have e-com, right, it's going through the website. And hopefully those are filtering into QuickBooks so that you can see it. But for some, they don't, right? And those, they have to find a way to put that entry in. We see this a lot in these two scenarios, right? Because they're actually putting it into their point of sale system, possibly, or they're having the website keep up with it, and then they make a manual entry at the end of the month to record their sales, hopefully record their COGS, but that's usually what gets missed, is how much does it cost me to do that business, right? Or how much did it cost for me to actually sell you that one product? That's where these other transactions tie into, okay? If I'm receiving my inventory, or if I'm putting in my expenses, right, for my product, then that if I am setting up my items correctly, right, then that's going to impact my COGS when I'm using inventory or my expenses when I'm putting them on a bill. Okay. Again, they're all linked together. So if we're waiting to the end of the month, when I go in here to run my financial statements, profit and loss, for instance, I won't have anything for my month. Okay, so that's definitely an area that we need to focus on to make improvements. All right. Let me go back to one other area. If I'm looking, so cash flow. So here's a prime example. We've been slow in entering our AR. So as you can see, I've got my weeks. Then this is just a cash forecast, our cash flow forecast. So we've been slow in entering our accounts receivable, but we have been entering our accounts payable. Okay. Now our bank account started out at 40,000, but now look, we're down to 33 because we're not bringing in any money or at least not as much as we're spending. Okay. So that's another reason that we wanted to take care of our transactions more timely. So if I'm entering my invoices, and again, cash versus accrual is a little bit different. I've set this up for accrual. If I am entering my invoices, then it's going to show me, let me just go in here. So if I'm entering my invoice for whatever it is I sold, then when I come in over here and I'm looking at my aging, it's going to help me to see, hopefully plan, how much money should come in. So if I have my term set up correctly, then this is going to show when they're due. And so then I can make sure that I'm getting paid, right? So if we have to set up some collections, we can do that too. If we're waiting until the end of the month to record our sales, so let's say that we invoice everything at the end of the week instead of as it comes, here's some of the areas that it's going to impact us. Okay, one, it's going to be another week before the customer even gets it, right? To know that they owe us the money. Well, obviously they should know that they owe us the money, but whether or not it's due at that point, because it's usually due, the terms are set by the date we enter the invoice. Okay, so that delays income coming in or the cash coming in. Same thing on the expenses. If we delay on those, then that means if we run our profit and loss report, we don't actually know what our expense has been out. And we may go ahead and say, let's go ahead and buy something. And we've already kind of spoken for that expense money, right? Because we didn't show it on here, so we thought we had more income than we did. All right. So let's go close some of these out. Go ahead and close that one and that one. We have the same on our AP side too, right? We have our aging, so this allows us to show, right? Now, if we happen to see that we have, I probably should have left that report open. So let's say we have some sitting in this over 90 or even in the over 60, we can start making decisions on them like at a monthly basis on who we need to, especially if they're sitting over here. Do we really owe those? Do we have credits maybe that we need to utilize? Same thing on the aging side, the customer side, right? If we have invoices over here, that means they still owe us. We need to start, if we haven't already, start reaching out. So as you can see, if we're doing these on real time, then we can make those decisions, right, to get either the money coming to us or making sure that we're paying what we owe. Now, this again is another service that a lot of people don't have time to look at until at the end of the year, like especially if they have a tax team helping them. They have to send their reports in. The tax group is looking at them going, wait a minute, these are too old. We probably need to write these off. Well, if we're taking care of those on a monthly basis, like creating a monthly workflow process for what we need to be looking at, then we won't have to worry about that at the end of the year when it's already so busy, okay? All right, let's see. It looks like I may have a question in here if I can get that where I can see it. So they don't enter, especially petty cash. Petty cash is a big one too, right? Because there's money in the box, depending on how we keep it. Back in the day, I used to have a cash box that I kept locked up. So I can definitely understand that, because we would wait till we actually needed to replenish it before we recorded them. So there are ways that you can record them, right, and make sure that they are in the system against the account. And that way, let me go over here to our balance sheet. All right, so you can create a petty cash account, and this should match what's in your box. So you can record them as they occur and still keep up with them in the system. And then that, again, allows you to see where we are, right? And for some, they may not have a large petty cash amount. I think ours was 500, just because sometimes they needed to go buy something to take to a job. But it's still important, okay? So definitely I can see, curious to know if that has a positive or impact on you whenever you're trying to figure those out. Thanks for the question. Okay, so then looking at our some of the other areas for process improvement or creation. So I am on the bill tracker. So to get, for those of you that are not familiar with a bill tracker, if I go to vendors and bill tracker, this is what comes up. So it's kind of like a dashboard. It shows me what my open purchase orders are. So if I am using those non-posting transactions, such as purchase orders and sales orders and estimates, it's still important to clean those up too. All right. The reason for that is we have at times these drive, especially, okay, so for the purchase order side, right, this is going to drive what we need to order or what we've already ordered, right? And so if these are old, which some of these can be older, but if they are old enough that we know they're not accurate, they're going to impact other reports. So we want to make sure we're cleaning these up. A lot of people do it annually. Some people do it twice a month. I always recommend, if possible, to do it monthly. Reason for that is if I am using this, especially for inventory management, if my purchase order numbers are not accurate, that report's not accurate, okay? And I do train a lot of people on how to use those reports. So one of the first things we cover when we're doing that is making sure your purchase orders and your sales orders are real, okay? Also, you can see your open bills and overdue. So this is a good place to kind of manage that. Just kind of keeps it all right there. We also have the income tracker, which is on the customer side, right? And to get there, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go right here to my income tracker. Same dashboard feel. This just gives me a little more to look at. So I have my open estimates. Same here, right? If we've got an estimate and we know the customer's not coming back, or maybe we gave a customer 2 estimates, they chose one and not the other, we need to go in and close those. And I'll show you how to do that if you're not sure how to do that in a second. Sales orders, the same. And again, if I'm using sales orders to drive when I order my inventory, making sure that those sales orders are real, just like the purchase orders, is really, really important. All right, now this is an area that a lot of people don't realize is turned on, but the time and expenses, in this case, we're using them. This is what we need to bill out to our customers for extra things that we did for them. So we went and picked up certain supplies that were not on the quote, for instance, or maybe it's something that we do as a recurring service for them. We want to make sure these are real as well. All right. Now, as far as looking at a sales order or a purchase order to clean those up, there's a little button right here. And this is on all those non-posting. And again, because they're non-posting, a lot of people just don't think about them again, but they're still important to keep up with because, again, they drive other reports. Not to mention, they're just sitting there. Why keep the noise, okay? So if I click on that, it now marks it as closed, and that's on all of those transaction types. All right, now that we've kind of gone through the day-to-day, right, on how we utilize some of these, let's talk about the banking side, okay? Because this is really important on the credit card charges particularly, but we see it on the bank transactions too, especially if we're doing like e-com or retail. Those transactions are coming in all the time, right? Credit cards, if we use those cards a lot, they're coming in all the time. So if we have our bank accounts or credit card accounts set up, connected to the bank, right? So if we're utilizing our banking center, which I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago, I can't remember. But if we have these set up here where the transactions are coming in, right, then that actually helps us to capture those every time they come, right? So that on the credit card side, then we know exactly what day it came in, technically cleared the bank. On the bank side, right, if it's a deposit or a check we wrote, those are coming in. Now, if we've issued the check from the system, that expense is already there. But if the bank comes in and it matches, we know we can also catch, which is another step, we can catch if there's a variance, or in some cases, and I've had this actually personally happen at a couple of places I've worked where there was an attempt at fraud. Okay, so the bank feeds help us do more than just capture the cost. They can also help us monitor our accounts. Okay, now, once we have all of that in there, what are we supposed to do with it? All right, well, so if we go out and look at our, let's look at our balance sheet first. So there's a lot of reports we can use to justify our numbers and make sure that those are right. Okay, and this is twofold. And as I mentioned before, Fourlane does a lot of this with our clients, right, to help them just to, one, make sure the data is correct and accurate, but two, helps them free up some more time. So we will double check and make sure, is our accounts receivable correct? If we're doing this on a weekly basis or at minimum a month-end basis, then we don't have those unpleasant surprises when it comes time for tax submission, okay? And again, that's our focus. How do we get the data in the system? And how do we know what to do with it when we take it out? Or if we're looking at our reports, what are they telling us so that we know what to do or what to look for? So if our accounts receivable number matches our aging report, our accounts payable matches that aging report, then we at least know there's no surprise transactions in there. We see a lot of differences many times on the accounts payable or inventory if we are using inventory, because it's easy to hit that account. Well, we can do accounts receivable too, but sometimes by hitting the inventory account, for instance, on our bill as a general ledger account or expense instead of an actual item, then that can make it where our inventory doesn't tie back to our balance sheet. Okay, if we duplicate some of our stuff, that can also impact our numbers too. If we end up, let's say that we enter a bill because the vendor sent us a bill, but we had actually entered the receipt and we didn't match those up. We just basically impacted our inventory twice. We see that a lot too. Now, this file, I have prepaids in here. So for those not familiar with what a prepaid account is, prepaid can be lots of different things. We usually see it with insurance. If we're paying for a year and we're an accrual basis and we're paying that insurance, let's say in November, right? But we want to expense it out over the year because we want to see, again, our goal is what are we actually doing? So let me go over here to our P&L as well. So we want to see how we are doing month by month. So let's do this let's do last fiscal year, and let's show this as a quarter. So if we're wanting to see month over month or quarter over quarter, because some businesses will do quarterly because they may have to submit that information to the bank, right? Or maybe they have to submit it to their investors. We want those amounts that we need to pay. Instead of showing everything in November, which skews our November numbers, we can put it in a prepaid. Okay, so we can sit it over here in the total amount, but then every month we need to expense an amount to our insurance expense, for instance, okay? We can automate that too by making that a recurring journal entry. So you can memorize it and actually either set it to remind you or automate that transaction. So we let the system do the heavy lifting, right, on some of those that we know. If we're not sure, that's when you need to reach out and say, hey, Fourlane, we need some help, right? If we are looking at our bills, we can automate those as well. So if, let's say we have rent that's due every month, we can automate that. If we're having to pay that bill or issue that check, right, we can help memorize those and set that reminder or set that automation for so many months just to let it go ahead and process. Our goal is to take, instead of taking a full month to close out our month, which closing out our month means making sure our accounts receivable ties to the aging, making sure AP ties to the aging, make sure our inventory evaluation summary matches what's on the balance sheet, making sure our sales tax is paid, right? Making sure that I have those month-end prepaid entries done. Just going through, making sure that everything for the credit cards have been expensed out, making sure that all of my bills are entered, all of that. That's a lot of work, right? And if we are waiting until the last day of the month or last week of the month even, that's a lot of stuff to catch up on. So if there's ways that we can help, let the system help us, right, by automating some of those transactions, or even reaching out and saying, hey, I need somebody to look at my financials. I don't know what it's saying. I don't understand it. Then maybe we can set up some KPI indicators for you, which one of the big common ones for us is looking at our current assets in comparison to our current liabilities, right? Because we want our liabilities less than our assets, but if we're not looking at our reports, how do we know, right? So making sure that we're paying attention to all of that, finding ways to make it easier is just crucial. Just now realized that we're closing up and we're getting really close on time. I really hope that you were able to take something away from this. If you have any questions, please reach out. Let us know. We're here to help. And if there's anything that we can help as far as help teaching you to automate your system somewhat, or even creating a process so that you know what needs to happen when, you can reach out and let us know that too, because those are things that we focus in on our clients a lot, especially those that we've had long term, because as we get through projects, that's usually the next step, right? We clean it up, we fix it, whatever that may be, but then it's the long term every day, and how do we make things better, and how do we know, right? In the case here, how do we know what we're looking at? These just look like a lot of numbers to me, right? Well, they're not, hopefully, unless we're not entering our transactions on a timely basis, in which case they may just be a bunch of numbers that may not reflect anything. So again, if you need some help with that, let us know. We'll be happy to guide you. I hope everybody has a great day, and thank you.